You ever sit at a family dinner and feel like you're just there to refill drinks and get roasted like the turkey? Yeah, that was every holiday growing up in my house. My name's Rhett, and I was the family disappointment before I even had a chance to disappoint anyone. Kidda. I wasn't addicted to anything, didn't get arrested, never joined a cult. I just wasn't my sister Delaney. That was enough. Delaney was the crown jewel of our family tree. Straight A's, prom queen, full ride to an Ivy League school, and a TED Talk before she turned 27. Meanwhile, I peaked at building a passable treehouse and barely passed Algebra 2. My parents, Marlene and Warren, were the kind of people who used words like legacy and potential at brunch. Delaney was their investment, I was their tax deduction. It all came to a head the Thanksgiving I turned 24. I'd just dropped out of my second college. The first one kicked me out after I missed too many classes, trying to juggle a job that barely covered textbooks. The second one I left voluntarily. Sort of. It's not like I had a lot of choice when you owe the school $3,000 and your car dies in the middle of midterms. Heck. So yeah, I came home for the holiday, which in retrospect was like jumping into a shark tank covered in barbecue sauce. Delaney was fresh off a book deal, sitting at the head of the table like she was running a Fortune 500 company from her mashed potatoes. My dad kept asking if I was still pursuing that computer thing, like coding was some bizarre phase, just a hair better than finger painting, and then there was the moment. You know, the moment. Every dysfunctional family has one, the one where you finally realize you're not just the odd one out, you're the punchline. Mom stood up to make a toast. She talked about how proud she was of her driven, compassionate, world-changing daughter. Then she turned to me and added, "And we're hoping Rhett finds his path soon. He's figuring things out." I didn't say a word. I just nodded, smiled, and tried not to choke on dry stuffing and disappointment. That night, I packed a bag, took what was left of my savings, which was like $325 and a Blockbuster gift card, and crashed at my buddy Mike's place. He lived in the back of a bait shop, which is exactly as glamorous as it sounds. I spent the winter sleeping on a pull-out couch that felt like it was stuffed with bricks and broken dreams. No job, no degree, no real skills. Just a beat-up laptop, a Wi-Fi signal strong enough to steal from the bar next door, and a chip on my shoulder the size of Texas. Most nights, I just stared at the ceiling and thought, is this it? Is this the part where I become the cautionary tale? The guy who peaked in high school and never left his hometown? But something in me, it might have been pride, or maybe just spite, wasn't ready to fold. I was tired of being the footnote in my own life. So one night, in the glow of a bug zapper and a browser full of free tutorials, I decided I was going to teach myself how to code. Not for my parents. Not for Delaney. Just for me. See-durs. I didn't have a plan, but I had time. And anger. And honestly, sometimes that's all you need to start something real. I didn't tell anyone. No social media posts, no dramatic updates, just silence. I disappeared into the digital wilderness like a man with something to prove and nothing to lose. Wonder. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. Back then it was just survival. But oh man, what came next? That was the beginning of the rebuild. There's a strange kind of freedom in being written off. When people think you're going nowhere, they stop watching. And when they stop watching, you get to build in peace. That's what I did. That busted laptop of mine, it became my best friend. It didn't judge me, didn't compare me to Delaney, didn't ask me why I hadn't figured out my purpose yet. It just booted up, slowly, and waited for me to type something that might matter. I started with YouTube tutorials. The free kind, where the audio cuts out every 5 minutes and the guy teaching sounds like he's chewing on gravel. But I took notes like it was gospel. I learned HTML, CSS, JavaScript, stuff that sounded like code names in spy movies but turned out to be the language of people who build things that matter. Days bled into nights. I'd wake up at noon, eat stale cereal, and dive back into it. Coding became the one thing I could control. It didn't care where I went to school or didn't. It didn't need a resume or references. All it wanted was effort. And that I had in spades. I got my first freelance gig off a Reddit post, of all places. A guy needed a simple landing page for his dog treat business. Offered me $50 and a shout-out on his Facebook page, which was about as valuable to me as a paper umbrella in a hurricane. But I said yes. I built that page like it was for NASA. Virus. Then I did another. And another. Each job barely paid enough to cover gas station coffee, but it was fuel for something bigger. I started reading startup blogs and tech forums like they were treasure maps. Turns out, people will pay real money for tools that solve real problems, especially small businesses who don't want to spend big agency money. That's when I got the idea. I'd build a platform for local businesses to create their own simple websites. Nothing fancy, just drag, drop, go live. Most of them didn't need anything more than a page that didn't look like it was built in 1998 by someone's nephew. I called it RuskBet. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. And more importantly, it sold. Ord. I launched it quietly. No launch party, no press release, no tweet storms. Just a clunky little site, a couple of ad dollars, and a free trial button. Within a few months, I had over 100 paying users. Not a unicorn startup, but enough to move out of Mike's place and into my own apartment. The kind with real walls, not just a curtain between you and a fridge full of expired milk. Not of Mike's foreign source. I kept things small. Lean. I hired a guy from Portugal to help with customer service, a designer from India to clean up the UI. We communicated through Google Translate and GIFs. But somehow, it worked. And still, I told no one back home, not even a breadcrumb. My number was the same, but I stopped answering calls from anyone with my area code. I'd get the occasional, "You alive?" text from mom, or a passive-aggressive group chat update about Delaney's newest keynote speech in Dubai or wherever. I didn't reply. What was the point? They hadn't cared when I was drowning. Why should I share now that I was swimming? There was something sacred about the silence. I wasn't doing this for likes or validation. I was building a life I could actually live in. One where my worth wasn't tied to grades, appearances, or curated holiday photos. And for the first time in ever, I felt good. Not vacation in Bali good. More like wake up and not hate my reflection. Good. Solid. Grounded. By the end of year one, RuskBet had over 1,000 users. I was making more in a month than my dad ever did at his insurance job. My days were full of meetings, my nights were spent tweaking code and answering emails. I was tired, sure, but in the best way. Happy. You know what's funny? Success is loud when it happens to the people everyone expects to succeed. But when it happens to the black sheep, the one everyone counted out, it's like a tree falling in the forest. If no one's around to see it, did it even happen? I didn't care. I wasn't building this to be seen. I was building it to be free. And I was. But of course, freedom doesn't last forever. Especially when your past comes knocking. It started with a DM from a girl I barely remembered from high school. "Hey, is it true what happened to your sister?" I didn't respond. Mostly because I had no idea what she was talking about. I hadn't heard Delaney's name in months, not because she'd gone quiet. Oh no. Delaney was still out there, posting filtered selfies from glass buildings and sharing quotes like, "Fail forward, rise with grace." She was always rising with grace. But a couple hours later, my phone buzzed again, this time from a buddy who used to intern at some media site. "Yo, tell me you've seen the expose on Delaney?" And that's when I looked. There it was. Front page of some big digital outlet. Motivational speaker Delaney Callahan, accused of plagiarism, business misconduct. Full spread. Screenshots. Anonymous testimonials. A recording that sounded a lot like her dismissing a client's mental health struggle as, quote, a branding issue. I sat there, blinking at the screen, not sure whether to laugh or just exhale and stare at the ceiling. Delaney, the untouchable, the sainted, the family investment, was unraveling in real time. The article tore her whole empire apart. Turns out a bunch of her speeches and original posts were lifted from obscure TEDx talks and Reddit threads. Her publishing deal got yanked within 48 hours. Her sponsors started ghosting her. A client threatened to sue. And suddenly, the family that hadn't spoken to me in nearly 2 years remembered I existed. The first call came from my mom. I didn't pick up. Then my dad. Ignored again. Then the group chat. A flurry of messages. Mom. Just checking in. Hope you're doing well. Dad. We're going through a tough time as a family. It would be good to talk. Delaney. Hey. I know it's been a while. I'd love to catch up. I stared at that one for a good minute. It wasn't even funny. It was surreal. The last time Delaney had texted me, she'd sent a screenshot of a Forbes article she was in with the caption, "Thought you'd like this," which I hadn't. But thanks. And now? Now she wanted to catch up. I didn't answer any of them. Not out of spite, but because I knew what this was. It wasn't about reconnecting. It was damage control. I could practically hear the pitch. Let's show a united family front. We've always been close. You've got your own thing going, right? Maybe you could help? Nope. Not playing that game. But then it escalated. They showed up. I was working late, sipping cold brew at 9 p.m. and trying to fix a bug that made RuskBet crash on mobile. I heard the buzzer ring and figured it was a food delivery gone wrong. Instead, I opened the door and there they were, Mom and Dad, standing there like the ghosts of Christmas disappointment. My dad looked older than I remembered, thinner. Suit slightly wrinkled, like he'd been wearing it for days. Mom was holding a gift bag. A gift bag. As if she were visiting for brunch, not ambushing the son she hadn't spoken to in years. "Can we come in?" she asked, like we were on speaking terms. Like any of this was normal. "Nope," I said and leaned on the doorframe. There was a pause. My dad cleared his throat like he was about to launch into a monologue. I could see it coming. The long-winded plea. The guilt trip. The nostalgia bomb. But I wasn't a kid anymore. I wasn't standing in that kitchen, getting compared to Delaney. I was a man who'd built something. Who'd survived their absence, and come out better for it. "We're just going through a lot right now," Dad said, trying to keep his voice measured. "We thought maybe we could talk." "About Delaney?" I asked. They glanced at each other. "About everything." "Yeah, sure." I didn't invite them in. I stood there and let them fumble through vague apologies and emotional bait like it was a garage sale they weren't ready to admit they needed. My mom even teared up a little. She talked about regrets and family bonds and how maybe it's time we came back together. I could have said a lot in that moment. About how they ignored me. About how Delaney got my college fund and I got a stack of passive-aggressive post-its. About how they never believed in me until I became useful. Instead, I just smiled and said, "It's late. You should head back." My dad opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but something in my eyes must have told him not to. They left, and I shut the door. Taps. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cruel. I just felt done. Like a door I didn't even know was open finally clicked shut behind me. But I knew this wasn't over. Delaney hadn't shown up yet, and something told me she would. I should have known she wouldn't send a text first. Delaney never did small gestures. She was the kind of person who delivered apologies the same way she delivered birthday speeches, loud, public, and a little too polished. So when I opened my door a few days after my parents' surprise visit and found her standing there in a blazer that probably cost more than my first car, I wasn't shocked, but I was annoyed. "Hey, Rhett," she said, like we were old friends, like the last 2 years hadn't happened. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside, not because I owed her anything, but because I needed this. I needed to look her in the eye and see if she was still playing the role, or if she'd finally figured out she wasn't invincible. She walked into my place like it was a showroom, eyes darting to the clean lines of my minimalist furniture, the smart home setup, the view from the window. The silence between us stretched long enough for her to realize something was off. This wasn't the failure she remembered. "You've done well for yourself," she said, trying to sound casual. "I have," I replied, offering nothing else. She sat on the edge of the couch, stiff and rehearsed. "I guess you've seen everything going on. Hard to miss when your downfall goes viral." She winced. "Good." Delaney always had this talent for making her voice tremble just enough to sound fragile without ever actually breaking. "It's been hard. People I trusted turned on me. It's like one mistake erased everything I built." "One?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "You plagiarized. Gaslit clients. Took money and offered nothing. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern." The tremble in her voice faded. There she was, the real Delaney, cloaked in ambition, polished in denial. "I know I made choices that weren't great," she said, "but the media spun it out of control. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. You didn't mean to get caught. Her jaw clenched. Silence again. I sat across from her, arms folded. So what's the pitch, Delaney? You show up, say sorry, and I what? Help fix your brand? Be the prodigal brother returning to prove we're one big happy family? She finally looked me in the eyes. No, I'm not here for that. Then why? She hesitated, and that hesitation said everything. She was here because she was sinking, and she knew I wasn't. I thought maybe we could reconnect, she said. Start fresh. I let out a dry laugh. You know when I could have used a fresh start? When I flunked out of school and you told everyone I was just lazy. When I had to sleep on Mike's crusty couch and Mom sent me job applications with the subject line, something you can actually handle. When you got famous off talking about resilience and never once called to see if I was alive. Her face flushed. But she didn't deny it. That's the thing about people like Delaney. They don't fight the facts. They just twist the meaning. You were always distant, Rhett. No, I snapped. I was discarded. And I got tired of waiting to be invited back to a table I was never welcome at. I stood up. She stayed seated. You all saw me as a cautionary tale, I said. And now that I've built something on my own, you think I owe you reconciliation. But I didn't build this to prove you wrong. I built it to finally be free of all of you. Delaney didn't say anything, just stared at the floor, like she'd finally run out of lines. Then she stood up. I'm sorry, she said, voice low. I really am. Not just for what I did, but for not being there when you needed me. I studied her for a moment. Maybe it was genuine. Maybe it wasn't. But it didn't really matter anymore. I appreciate the words, I said. But I'm not your rehab arc. I'm not here to make your comeback feel wholesome. You need to clean up your own mess. She nodded slowly, eyes glassy. And for once, Delaney Callahan didn't try to spin it. She just walked to the door and let herself out. When it clicked shut behind her, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief. Not revenge. Just release. Anti-IDF. I didn't need their approval anymore. And they didn't have access to me anymore. Funny thing about finally speaking your truth. After all the yelling, the silence is louder than ever. Delaney left. No dramatic ending, no one-liner, no cliffhanger. Just walked out the door and back into whatever storm she'd created. And just like that, the past didn't feel like a weight anymore. It just felt distant. The next morning, I did something small, but huge in my own weird way. I deleted the family group chat. No message, no announcement. Just poof. Gone. I think part of me had kept it there out of habit. Some quiet hope that one day they'd say the right thing. But hoping for something that's never coming? That's just emotional hoarding. And I'm finally ready to clean house. I spent the next few days doing normal things. Laundry. Grocery shopping. Grabbed coffee with a couple guys from a local entrepreneur group. Real people. No suits. No egos. We talked about failed launches and annoying bugs, like we were discussing the weather. It was nice, normal, safe. I used to think healing would feel epic, like a movie montage set to some indie rock song. Turns out it's more like standing in your kitchen at 10:43 p.m., eating cold pizza and realizing you're not mad anymore. And then, something hit me. For the first time since I left home, I wasn't building to escape. I was building because I liked where I was going. That's a big shift. When survival isn't your fuel anymore, you start asking different questions. Like, who do I want to become? What kind of life do I want to live? So I made a decision. I took some of the Rusk Bet profits and bought a small place on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. Just a little two-bedroom with creaky floors and the kind of porch you could drink coffee on while watching the world wake up. I started going to community events, volunteered at a coding boot camp for high schoolers, not to prove anything, just because it felt good. His name's Murphy. He snores like a chainsaw and thinks cardboard boxes are mortal enemies, but he's loyal and greets me like I've returned from war every time I come home with groceries. Never thought I'd be that guy, walking a goofy mutt through the park in joggers and old hoodies, but here I am, and here's the wildest part. I'm happy. Not everything's perfect. Happy. Just I can breathe without guilt. Happy. There's a difference. Sometimes I think about what I'd say to the kid I used to be, the one sleeping on couches, feeling like everyone else got a manual for life and he got a blank page. I'd tell him this: you weren't broken, you were just unclaimed. And sometimes the best things we become are built in silence, brick by stubborn brick. And if I ever have kids, my own or adopted, or just some neighborhood teens who think my dog's cool, I'll raise them like I wished I was raised. With room to fail. With space to be seen. With the kind of love that doesn't require proof of success to feel real. One night, not long ago, I wrote something down. Didn't plan to share it with anyone, just a letter. To my future. To the life I'm building. Dear future me. If you're reading this, I hope you never forget where you came from, but I hope you've stopped letting it define you. I hope your life is full of people who love you for who you are, not what you do. I hope you still take walks without your phone sometimes. I hope Hucky's still alive and stealing socks. And I hope you've forgiven them, even if you never let them back in. Skier, you didn't win because you succeeded. Skier, you won because you stopped needing them to clap. So that's where I am now. Rhett Callahan. Ex-black sheep, current human being. Still figuring it out, but finally free from a past that no longer gets to write my story. If you're reading this and you've ever felt like the background character in your own life, trust me, you're not. You just haven't found your scene yet. And when you do, burn the script. Build your own.